Hello everyone, today we'll be looking at, you could probably guess if you read the title or if you watched the last video, the eggplant. Now, before I really get into this review, one thing I really we should probably brush over is the distinction between fruits and vegetables. Now, the eggplant itself is a fruit, typically speaking. Like if you were to grow the eggplant plant, the eggplant fruit comes from a variety of cultivated nightshade, but if you were to grow this would be the fruit that you get from the plant. But if we were cooking it, we would call it a vegetable. That's generally what people go by. You know, tomatoes and the one thing people usually get mixed up, is it a fruit, is it a vegetable? The answer is, you know, technically it is a fruit, but when it comes to things that are usually more savory, things we use to cook with, people in general day-to-day conversation, colloquially, they will call them vegetables, because that's what they use. That's what they use them for, to cook with. They don't just, I mean, unless you're me, you don't usually grab a tomato and just bite into it like it's an apple. So with that out of the way, we'll be talking about the eggplant vegetable, which is also a fruit. So the second thing we really want to get out of the way before there's any sort of funny business, you know, we really want to settle the score here, because the eggplant is something that's been much maligned in popular culture today. People, vulgar people have been using it for lewd purposes, and we want to get that all out of the way. This is just talking about the fruit today. That's what we want to focus on, or the vegetable even. That's what we want to talk about. You know, what's it all about? How should we eat it? Should we eat it at all? What can we get out of it? That's what we want to focus on. So if you're a vulgar sort of person, you don't think you can get through this review, you might want to just turn off the video right now. So, you know, growing up, I didn't eat much eggplant, very little. So this is sort of really delving into it for me, because I'm not a big eggplant eater. I don't go out and eat a lot of eggplant. Typically, it's much more popular in, you know, Asian cuisine that we'll get into. Though it's a bit iffy. We'll get a bit more into that in a second. You know, so in the Far East, so Asian cuisine, the Middle East, a lot of like Arab countries and Mediterranean countries use eggplant. So in Spain, in Italy, and all through Asia and the Middle East, Greece, it's very popular there. I never personally ate a lot of eggplant, so this is an experience for me, a journey that we'll hopefully be able to get through together. So this, maybe it's different where you are, but this is the typical eggplant that I see when I go to the store. This is, I think, probably an Italian eggplant. It is a kind of purple, but it's very dark. It's basically black. Now you do get different types of eggplant. The other type I see, very similar shape, basically exactly the same shape to this, but it's lighter purple with white streaks, white stripes. I think that's called Sicilian eggplant. Exactly the same function, cooks exactly the same. Same thing I've never seen, but I am aware that it exists, is white eggplant. Exactly the same, but the skin here is white, like an albino eggplant. The other types that you will see is Japanese and Chinese eggplant. There is a difference between the two, but to the naked eye they're very similar. They're not short and fat like this, they're very long and thin. The other types you can get that I've never seen, I think, is probably Thai eggplant is the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Very small, they're like berries. They just sort of throw them into curries and stuff like that. You don't have to cut them up or anything. They're already really tiny. Nothing like this. Okay, so we'll sort of, we already know what it looks like. So we want to delve into the other senses before we get to the last one, the most important one when we're talking about fruits, vegetables, any kind of food really, which is taste. But I mean, it doesn't really smell of anything, which is good. Typically, you know, if you buy fruit and vegetable and you get a really strong smell, it probably means it's not good to eat anymore. But the obvious quality about eggplant is it's very firm, very rubbery, completely very smooth. When eggplant gets to the end of its cycle of when it's still good to eat, it really starts to get dimply, not as firm, you know, quite a bit softer, not smooth at all. So when you go and you buy eggplant, this is what you want to look for. Not smooth. When you hit it, your hand really bounces back because it's quite meaty, quite dense, sort of like a thick zucchini. So that sort of sets it apart from a lot of other vegetables. You know, like a potato is you don't really want potatoes to be soft. You want them to be quite hard. It has a bit of give, but it's still quite firm, rubbery, very nice. You know, you push your thumb in, and it doesn't leave a mark. It just bounces straight back. So, I mean, that's all I can really say about the eggplant. You know, people say, maybe when I get to doing a watermelon review, people will say if you knock on it, if you flick it, if you slap it, you can tell how good the watermelon is inside. You don't have to really, you know, you can tell by the sound it makes. You don't have to really worry about that with the eggplant because you can already tell from the skin, you know, how much give it has, whether it's still alright. So we're gonna dive in, see what the eggplant tastes like. I'm going to give you my thoughts, and we'll get on with it. See how you go. All right. This is my first taste testing an eggplant in quite a while, so it'll be interesting. Not really a huge fan of that. If you want to look inside, you can see along just on the inside of the flesh there it's green, but the main flesh itself is white, and that's still quite firm, quite meaty. It's not just the skin that gives it the toughness, but you know, biting in, it's quite tough. You know, very juicy. You know, there's a lot of water inside the eggplant, which is good, but the skin, it's not nice. It's kind of bitter, kind of spicy, which isn't the best. So I'm not sure about this. Give me another bite, and we'll keep on going. Not bad though. Better than what I was expecting. Now, eggplant is not meant to be eaten raw. So, usually in typical cuisine, it's like a potato. I have eaten potatoes raw. It's not a pleasant experience, so I don't recommend it. That wasn't too bad, you know, but it's not something you really want to be doing. If somebody gave you an eggplant, you wouldn't just bite into it like an idiot. Eggplant is meant to be cooked with. That's generally what we do. I'm really going to be comparing it to zucchini, squash, potatoes in this review, because that's really what it's like a lot of the time. A lot of the time it serves as a base for foods like potato or squash or something like that. It's just a base for you to, like you use it to replace other carbs. But so here, fresh out of the oven, you know, when I get a new ingredient that I'm not used to cooking with, I don't really know what it'll taste like. and I want to get a taste of what it will be like, what I'll do is I'll just chuck it in a pan or maybe the oven, a bit of olive oil, a bit of salt and pepper, maybe a touch of onion or garlic, not too much, because I really want to get a sense of the texture, the flavor, because if I've never cooked with it before, if I don't know what I'm doing, I really want to get a sense of what this fruit or vegetable is like, so I know how I can use it in the future, you know, because if I just throw it in a dish and then I'm eating it, it can become very difficult to sort out what it actually tastes like as it is mixed in with all the other flavors. So here I've got eggplant that I've just chucked into the oven. As you can see, it's got a bit of char on it for about half an hour. And before I get into that and we go ahead and taste that, I'll just briefly mention something that's almost specific to the eggplant. A lot of people complain about bitterness with eggplant as it comes from being a byproduct of the nightshade plant. It has like an enzyme in it that gives it a very bitter flavor. Now, what people will tend to do with eggplant before they cook with it is they'll cut it up into the pieces they might intend to use, let's say, and they'll just put salt on it, or they'll soak it in salt water, and the salt draws out or neutralizes that enzyme, so it gets rid of all the bitterness. Now there is a drawback to that. One of the benefits of cooking with eggplant is when you cook with it or when you use it in meals, it really soaks up a lot of the fats, the oils, the flavors of those things. Now when you use the salt, it can draw out it draws out a lot of the potential to soak in all those flavors and oils. It makes it, I guess, a bit less versatile, you might say. And the other thing, just before we move on, is you might want to try it with and without salting, because it really depends. I know these dark types of eggplant that they use now, that get shipped, that I mostly see, and I think in Western Europe is where they mostly see, these types of eggplants the most, is they've really worked hard to sort of breed the bitterness out of these, so you don't have to do that anymore. So you might want to try it. You might want to try it with or without, so to see if you can really notice that bitterness, and you might also be a fan of the bitterness to begin with. You know, some people like bitter foods, so I don't want to discount that at all. The other thing is, you know, just biting into this, I was surprised because it wasn't that bitter. It's a bit spicy, which was strange. I wasn't expecting that. You know, I've never bitten into an eggplant before. You know, you're not supposed to, but yeah, I was shocked because I did salt these bits of eggplant that I've roasted in the oven, and I'm wondering if I should have now, because this really wasn't that bitter at all. And I think these dark eggplants that you usually get are not very bitter typically. So we'll just take a piece of eggplant that I've roasted here, fresh out of the oven, and just go ahead and see what it's like. It's very interesting. There's nothing else that I can really compare it to apart from maybe squash or zucchini, which is interesting because they don't really, as far as I know, they don't really come from the same plant. But it's very meaty, you know. I just used a bit of olive oil, really soaked in that olive oil. Really soaked in that olive oil and that salt and pepper, which is really it's very fleshy, you know, it's very meaty. I can see, if you look at a lot of vegetarian dishes, they use it as a replacement quite a lot for meats in those foods. So I've also got a bit of onion and garlic, and a bit of just cooked in a bit of chicken juices that I've just put together, and I've just put on top here. I'll give that a bit of a try as well. Not that you'll have this at home when you cook eggplant, but I'm just doing this as to get a more generalized view. Okay, the first thing I might point out is that I'm not quite sure that I roasted the eggplant for quite enough time. The skin, when you cook eggplant, you've really got the option. You can peel it or you can leave the skin on. It's up to you. I left the skin on. It was a bit still tough to chew through. I think I might have some problems with my oven actually, but that was quite nice actually. Very nice. Now, a lot of times with eggplant, it depends obviously on the sort of dish you're cooking, but it really goes well, accompanies a lot of those Mediterranean flavors people think of, so like caramelized onions with a bit of garlic and capsicum or bell peppers if you prefer, and like that went really well together. I'm surprised. Eggplant, I don't know if I'll be buying because it's quite expensive for me at the moment, but that went pleasantly well together. I'm pleased, you know. It really eggplant is used a lot in stews. So like if you think of a ratatouille, there's a lot of they put eggplant in that, and that's just a stew that's sort of rendered down. And the roasting process has taken a lot of and the salting as well has taken a lot of the firmness of the flesh, but it's still very meaty, like a thick mushroom of it on a kind of deal. And that really goes well, really soaks in all those flavors. That's what you want. So like sun-dried tomatoes and caramelized onions, all that stuff is very good. The other thing that you can do with eggplant is if you roast it sort of at a low heat, or you put it in a pan and then cover it at a low heat, it'll come right down, and then you can use it in a dip like baba ganoush with all those sorts of flavors, and maybe like chickpeas and stuff like that mixed through. You know, they make it in India with all that sort of stuff. So that's at one end of the spectrum. That's like, you know, really you're using eggplant to make more of a sauce to put on things sort of deal. But on the other hand, you've got dishes like moussaka, which is sort of like a lasagna, but instead of the pasta you're using eggplant, and the stews like ratatouille and stuff like that. That's where you use eggplant, where you still want it to have that firmness and that hold that soaks in all those flavors, that gives it the texture that you're looking for, the added bit of firmness that you can chew down on in the food. So overall, you know, I'm quite happy with this, how this turned out. I was a bit worried because like I said, eggplant isn't something, I don't know if when I was a kid I said I didn't like eggplant, because that's something my mother always used to remember for like 10 years later. She said, oh, you hated eggplant, and it's like I haven't had it in 10 years. But I'm really happy with how this turned out, you know. I've got this bit of an eggplant left, so I'll use this and probably add more eggplant into my diet than I had planned if I hadn't done this review, because this has turned out quite well, you know, quite nice. But the last thing we'll sort of get onto is what are we getting from this nutritionally, you know. We're spending this money, we're going to the store, going to the market, buying an eggplant, we're spending this money. Are we really getting our money's worth when we buy an eggplant, nutritionally speaking? Not just taste, that's not what it's all about. Well, maybe it is for you, but we'd like to get something, vitamins, minerals, you know, keep our body healthy when we do go. The answer is no, really. Eggplant, mostly water, like it's very firm, but it's holding quite a lot of water. In terms of vitamins and nutrients, not really. You know, it's not very calorie dense, you know. It's very dense vegetable itself, but in terms of calories, no, not really. Like in comparison to potatoes, to yams, you know, stuff like that. Those all have more vitamins, more minerals, that sort of thing. But as I said, this doesn't have the same sort of flavor, same sort of texture that those things do. So that's not, you know, that's not the end of the world, because of course you're not just going to be eating eggplant just by itself, you know, unless you're me doing this review. You'll be topping it with whatever you feel like, really. But you know, typically you'd use the Chinese or the Japanese ones, sort of fry them, or maybe use them in a stir fry, or you'd use this as a base to lay out on top other vegetables, your meat, your cheeses, all that sort of thing. That's what it's really about. What you're getting from it is really the texture that you're looking for. But look, I'm not going to go out there, unless something is really horrible, which doesn't apply here, but I'm not going to go out there and say, hey, eggplant, not worth your time, just don't bother. Because really, if you've never had eggplant before, go out, you know, buy yourself one. If it's not too expensive, just chuck it in the oven, make up something simple, some, you know, just some minced garlic and some onion, some olive oil and some salt and pepper, maybe some rosemary and some sun-dried tomatoes, and put that on top and just give it a try. Because what have you got to lose? You know, you expand your flavor profile, your palate. You know, I'm quite happy with how this turned out. So looking at eggplant, I'm thinking the raw eggplant, we'll set that aside. We're not going to rate that, because that's just not appropriate. So the roasted eggplant, the eggplant overall, I'm gonna, let's say 7.3. I'm pretty happy with the eggplant. You know, go out, buy yourself an eggplant. What have you got to lose apart from money? Okay, next week should be pineapple. That should be out fairly quickly, because I'm always eating pineapple. I got pineapples everywhere. Pineapples coming out of my ears. So I'll see you then. Hope you enjoyed this review. Sorry about the phone call in the middle. I don't know who the hell that was, but hopefully you enjoyed the review. See you next time. If you've got any suggestions for fruits, vegetables, tubers, anything at all, but I won't pay attention to it unless it's fruit and vegetables, leave them in the comments, you know. Have a nice night, have a nice day, have a nice sleep. Just have a nice life in general. Goodbye.